Hill, the business podcast about bad ideas and the people who love them. I hate that intro. Anyways, today we're joined.
Hello. I'm Valerie Vasilas.
There we go. How's your day going?
It's been great. I can't complain. The weather's nice. My sun-blocking curtains are making my house lovely. And my
Awesome.
cat is sleeping right next to me, so I'm having the best time.
So you're having a quarantine Sunday, which is a day that feels like a Sunday regardless of the days because they're all the same.
Correct. Every day is Sunday here.
That's great to hear. So I wanted you to be a guest on this particular episode because you are one of the most, I'll say, environmentally and not even just like environmentally, but just conscientious, I think, just in general, people I know, and the way that you kind of feel about your impact on not just like other people, but like other things and like other ecosystems. Like you're very aware of it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's one of the great things about you, and you're always you're always hilarious to have in a conversation because it's just fun. It's a very fun point of view to have to like be like, yeah, that too. That's you're actually 100% right, Val. No, you're right. We fucking are real bad to pigs. Yeah, no, you're right. I get it. It's like, oh yeah, cool. I'm actually happy. I'm happy that's a part of my point of view now. That's cool.
Ooh, I'll send that specific soundbite to my dad. Because that's not he's like, oh, okay, Val.
Oh jeez. But so today's topic is one of California's, I guess it used to be a famous weekend getaway and now it's an infamous weekend getaway, since we're all
Are we talking about
locked in.
Coachella?
This is close to it. We're talking
Oh,
about the
okay.
Salton Sea.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So you're aware of the Salton Sea, right? Like
Yeah, it
what
doesn't
it
exist
is.
anymore, and yeah, right. I mean, like, okay, if I'm aware of, if I remember this, if I'm remembering this right, the Salton Sea is like this. It was this natural occurring like salt lake, the salt bed, and because of all of the tourism that happened and all of the heat, it just dried up, and now it's like this marshy, swampy, disgusting place that's just rotting away.
You're you're right in the sentiment. You're right in what it is now. You're right that there was tourism, and you're right that global warming's killing it. So you got a lot right there.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Yeah. All right. So let's just get into it. So the Salton Sea is a inland lake, basically an inland sea, because of its saline, nature. About 2.5 hours away from San Diego, and if you look at it on a map, it looks like one of the biggest bodies of water for literally hundreds of miles. Like I remember one day I came across it trying to look for a lake that I could just go to. I'm like, oh, Big Bear, not that's gonna be busy. Arrowhead, gonna be busy. What else is there? I'm like, oh shit, that looks like a big lake. Like, oh, it's the Salton Sea. Okay, never mind. It's
I was gonna say,
it's
did you look at a map, or did you like do like a Google Maps and like blow it
oh
out and
yeah,
be like,
I just did the Google Maps crawling with your pointer
and then you were
thing,
like,
just
look at
like
this
where.
blue dot.
Yeah, it's like sometimes you go for a drive, you just like trace the route and be like, where could I eventually turn back? It was like that.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's under sea level, which kind of is that's kind of like why it is there is because it's under sea level. But yeah, you definitely don't want to go into it at all. Like some salt lakes are like tourist attractions, like the Dead Sea. You just like float in it. Uh, there's like, I'm sure, the Salt Lake, I guess you don't really go into that. The
No.
Salton Sea is worse than the Salt Lake. It's considered one of like, it's literally considered a like an ecological disaster zone. And it's kind of a good example of like, what global warming and unregulated agriculture can do.
Yeah.
But all right. So the thing is, though, it wasn't always that. You were totally right about it used to be a thing. So yeah, it was a prehistoric lake called Lake Coahuila, and that this fucking lake was so big that it ran the Mexican-U.S. border. At one point, the Colorado River and like basically every river in the region kind of fed into it, and that's why it has such really good soil now, even though it's super dry. But it's not dry now because we have irrigation and like we've pumped a lot of the Colorado River into the surrounding basin. So it is a part of agriculture now. It's like kind of like the Midwest almost, that it's just covered in just like crops. But that ancient lake that everything sits on, it dried up about 300 years ago. And then it only flooded about 8 times until 1904. So like a good, you know, about 200-year stretch of just like it filling with water 8 times and no big deal. That's when in 1904, or uh, well, actually 1901, some monumentally stupid people did some monumentally stupid stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so basically they were trying to pump more like they're trying to pump more water into like farms and stuff. They were trying to create more pipelines, um, but they did a shitty job of building the walls around it. So one day they're just spraying a big leak in the Colorado River, and it ended up flooding all the way down to the lowest point, which is the Salton Sea.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. So it ran kind of uncontrollably for like 4 years. And by the end of it, they were like, oh shit, we actually have this like kind of posh, kind of like fucking, I don't know, big ass, like kind of like lake going on. And so these developers came in the 1950s. This fucking piece of shit, Penn Phillips. They bought an absurd amount of land around or near the sea, and they developed it, and they wanted to pitch it as like, get this, the Salton Riviera.
Oh, I remember reading that.
Yeah, like it's. I think that's where like I don't know what was going on in the 1950s with like vacationing. It was like Catalina and then Palm Springs, and like no one liked everyone liked being like hot as shit in the 1950s and just like
I,
completely overexposed to the sun.
I mean, maybe in the 1950s, maybe there was like a cold snap or something. Cause yeah, every single like stock photo of vacationing in the 1950s is like everyone in the sun waving, like it's like this delightful treat. And it makes you be like, I want to do that. And then you go out and you try to emulate that, and you're like, fuck, what am I doing out here?
I feel like I'm gonna die.
Yeah. And then like, and you're like, oh, look at this cute lady with her like huge sunglasses and big hat. Oh, they're so I wish I could be that. Oh god, no, I'm getting a rash, a sun rash.
her makeup won't allow her to sweat. It's just the
Well, like you
pores are
can't even see
clogged.
the sweat because it's a black and white grain photo. So you probably can't even see her rash or her sweaty makeup. So, we've got the technology now to like color correct and 3D render these photos. Let's go do it and see just how harsh it was in Palm Springs in the 1950s.
Just pimp, just giant zits right on the nose,
Oh my God, that's
sweating.
another thing. Have you ever seen any of those like photos with anyone with like acne?
No, no, because it's what they put in the water like after them. It's like the
Like
radioactive shit.
I've never seen like a 1940s or 50s woman with acne. And I'm like, God, look at my face. I've got this like chin zit. How does she not have that? What is she doing with her life? I'm
uh,
like, I was like, is that back when they were still using like bird shit on their face? Like, what are we missing out
uh,
on?
oh, it could have been. They grew up with a grandma that like definitely had many household uses for vinegar, both like medically and then just in general.
Well, why are we not still using vinegar? Like, why is that be like, what am I doing with my like Neutrogena wash? God, joke's on me.
um, yeah, and so when they developed this, they tried to like set up a bunch of like tourism around, and they held a regatta competition on the lake. And because like of course this fucking happened, like when you hear it you're like, oh shit, yeah, that doesn't even seem fair. They broke 21 world records
Oh,
because the lake was so buoyant, like it was so salty that they broke a bunch of like fresh or like inland water like regatta records.
well, that's a bunch of assholes then.
and and yeah, so like PR thing, they probably knew it was going to happen. And then uh so then around this, like with this kind of like yacht club as its like pearl, I guess, a bunch of communities cropped up. One was called the Salton City, and the other was called the Bombay Beach. And like they all had clubs, they had facilities. It was definitely like a high end kind of planned community. Like if you ever go to like a timeshare, it's kind of like that.
Hmm.
And they also had like Frank Sinatra and Beach Boys and like the biggest celebrities of their time like hanging out there. But I honestly wouldn't be surprised. Like honest, because like we know influencers and celebrities were just influencers back then. You know,
Yeah,
just like that's the we have the scale to the influencer now because like we were trained to do the same thing, but to them they were the only show in town.
yeah. So
I
basically,
wouldn't
yeah.
be
Once
surprised if
we
they just like had all expense paid, and then we'll give you like $10,000 to just
Well,
fucking hang out
absolutely.
here.
Like, you hear Frank Sinatra, like Frank Sinatra doesn't even Frank Sinatra after he had to be Frank Sinatra one time and then he never had to pay for anything in his entire life ever again. Like, he'll just like he'll just read in the newspaper like, "Oh, what's this? Salton Sea. Oh, cool. Bouncy floaty water." And then he drives down, he's like, "Yo, I'm Frank Sinatra." Bing.
Yeah.
And they're all capitalizing on that. Like Frank Sinatra came down. Everyone's like, I want to meet Frank
Frank Sinatra was the Joe Rogan of the 50s.
Sinatra.
ah, ah, God damn, I fucked up my elbow before I left LA. I hit one too many things with a skateboard.
Oh, I was gonna say that from moving, but it was skateboard. Okay.
Yeah, because I'm a child. But the heyday eventually didn't last. Penn Phillips, who again is a piece of shit, he had no interest in seeing the project through to its fruition. His former associate Raymond Pike quoted him in 2005 when he gave him this advice: "Your problem, Ray, is that you fall in love with the property. You need to learn that what you do is buy the land, build on it, sell it, and get out."
Oh, damn. So he's a house flipper, but for land.
But for entire communities,
Yeah,
yeah.
for
And
entire
so
bougie gentrified, like it wasn't even gentrified. I'm so sorry. It like started that way.
yeah, and like so like the town infrastructure wasn't really there. It's just these weird plots of like random houses in the middle of like, they used to be beachfront. That's the weird thing, is that there's photos of these places like the yacht club. The yacht club is just in the middle of nowhere. Like it's not near the sea. It's receded so much
Oh yeah,
already.
when you see like the before after photos, yeah.
Yeah. um so the reason why Penn Phillips is a piece of shit is because most of the houses ended up being unsold, and he just kind of gave up on it and he never developed it. He would eventually lose his license, his developer's license, in the state of California. And then he went to Oregon and tried the same shit in the high desert community of Christmas Valley. And there's a whole story behind that, similar to the Salton Sea. But because money buy respect in this world, he has a hall named after him in his alma mater, Claremont McKenna College. So he's a man
Ew.
who's very much screwed both the natural world and and people's livelihoods, and he's got a name at a college.
And he's got something named after him after doing all that.
Yeah, you know.
Fantastic.
He's a real cool guy. um Here's a write-up from a Slate Atlas Obscura article, The Salton Sea from Relaxing Resort to Skeleton Field Wasteland, that kind of fills in the gap between when it just didn't catch on to kind of where we are now, right?
Yeah.
By the late 1970s, the ecosystem was deteriorating rapidly with no drainage outlet, almost zero yearly rainfall, runoff flowing in from nearby farms. The sea was polluted with pesticides and saltier than the Pacific Ocean. Periodic flooding would brought Periodic flooding brought the poisoned water further ashore. Depleted oxygen in the sea killed scores of fish and dragged their rotting bodies onto the beach, where they shriveled in the sun. Oh God!
This is a great picture.
As they decomposed, the sand became coated in a layer of fragmented fish skeletons.
Atlas
So
Obscura is not holding back.
no, yeah, oh man. So that's what happened when tropical storms Kathleen and Doreen came through the area. And it's an area that's basically a desert. It doesn't get a lot of rains unless it really is a tropical storm, and it just happened to get hit with two, in quick succession. So and this was actually the biggest marina at the time, the yacht club thing. And so those facilities were basically destroyed in the hurricanes. And yeah,
Oh,
and then they abandoned the site. And then in 1986, they issued a warning to not eat the fish from the lake.
as though the decomposing fish corpses like washing ashore was not hint enough in the 70s. They had to wait until the 80s, which says to me that people were still trying to eat the fish between the 70s and the 80s. The fact that they
Oh
had to
yeah,
that what I don't know.
yeah.
I
It's
feel like how much because when someone has to pass that obvious of a warning or that obvious of a decree, it says that means that so someone looked at the fish, the dead fish that were popping up on the water, and they were like, that's fine, that's good, that's
well,
free food. Like someone
not
was
well,
still doing that.
oh my God, I hope that's not what they meant, because that's horrifying. What I interpreted this to mean, and you could be right for all I know. I didn't really dive too deep into this. I thought it meant you couldn't eat fish that you caught from the lake. Like they were that toxic. The live fish were even toxic, so don't eat them.
I was under the impression, I remember when I was reading up on this, that the water was so salty that it could not even sustain life. It could not even sustain any saltwater fish life. So I had thought that there was no live fish in there anyway. Like any fish that had so happened to run through via any irrigation would just die after some sort of time. That was the impression
Yeah,
that I got. Who knows? I also didn't do too deep of a dive.
yeah. So it's a generally unpleasant place to be, and it's got a lot of weird desert people around it too. Man, those desert people. There's something about Californian desert people, man. They terrify me, but whew, they're a thrill to be around. You've never felt more alive until you've hung out or just been around a desert person.
Well, I feel like I need to experience this because I grew up in Arizona, And so in
Well,
my
then you
head,
should feel it, yeah.
no, but I don't
Like just
know
that one of those
because
like
like
weird desert townies.
I don't know because like Phoenix desert, because Phoenix is a desert, but it's also a very built out desert versus
Hmm.
like, Salton Sea desert, because that's like, we out here and we rugged as fuck. We don't want to see you. Versus like
Yeah.
Phoenix desert people, I'm living there with like, 3 million other people. We see each other all the time. So it's gonna be a different experience. I'm curious, but I also hate the desert now. So I'm like
Yeah,
Anakin
because you lived in
Skywalker.
Phoenix.
Yeah. I'm the Anakin Skywalker of my Arizona.
Yeah, very similar paths. He started life in the desert and then he ended up in the redwood forests of California.
Yeah, after he fell into some lava. So, that part's happening. I haven't quite found a good place to burn all my limbs off, but I've definitely escaped my desert life. Uh, and I'm over
uh,
here now next to Disneyland.
living great.
I'm
Yes,
having a great time.
Disneyland.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, are you a Disneyland person? We haven't been to Disneyland yet.
Oh man. Okay, wait. Are you saying yet as in like you've never been in your entire life, or yet as in that's something Marianne and I have not experienced together?
It's something me and Marianne have not experienced together, and I don't remember when I went. I went when I was like I went when I was like 11. I wasn't really a kid that like paid attention a lot.
Okay. You had other things on your mind, like I don't know, when you were 11, probably Sonic the Hedgehog, uh what, N64,
Yeah, you know,
Pokemon
world
was out. I think we're,
events.
we're in the same we're in the same age group, so Pokemon was out when you were 11.
Yeah, I was probably burning through those batteries.
Yeah, your
I
Game
was
Boy. Yeah, right.
skateboarding.
Game Boy. Yeah, your Tech Decks, Tony Hawk 64. Yeah, man, you had no time to look at those like costume characters. Fuck them.
I remember going. I just don't remember things about it. I remember
Uh,
like I don't think we. I don't know if we went on a ride at all because my
what?
family doesn't stand in lines.
Oh, damn. So, what was the point?
Honestly, I think just so that I would shut up about it
Oh,
because I
okay.
probably was like being a brat. And they're like, "Fine, we'll bring you," and then it was terrible.
I will say, so
But
I've been.
it was like it was a bunch of cousins, so it was like a group of 6 or 7 kids. So we all,
Oh,
I think they made it like a family thing. So
yeah. That sounds hard.
yeah, yeah. Uh,
My family, I've been to Disneyland too many times. I don't, well, because like, okay, so, because my parents are divorced and,
mhm.
they hate each other. And so when I was growing up, they had to one up each other. So, my dad would take us to Disneyland and we'd come back with all these toys and autographs. And my mom would be like, oh, yeah? And then would take us to Disneyland and get us toys and autographs. And then the next year, my dad would be like, "Oh yeah, well, have you been to Disneyland with your favorite cousin?" And then we'd go to Disneyland again. And then my mom would be like, "Oh yeah, well, have you met Tinkerbell yet?" And then would take us to Disneyland. And like I was spoiled as fuck, and I didn't even know it until I was an adult, and like and it and like it didn't even register in my mind. I was just like, "Yay, I'm going to Disneyland so much. This is great." And uh and then as an adult, my dad still loves Disneyland. My dad told me once, cuz like it now that we're all adults, and now that I live in LA, like anytime my dad comes to visit, he tries to drag my other two sisters with me, and he's like, "Let's go to Disneyland," and I'm like, "Dad, I don't want to drive 2 hours just to go to Disneyland." And he's like, "But it'll be fun." And we're all miserable because it's so expensive and the lines are so long. And I'm like,
And the
"Dad, why do you?"
driving is real.
The
It's a
driving is
real
real.
excuse.
It's not. It's not worth it. I don't know. Make me. It is for some people. For me, I'm like, I don't. I don't know if I'm gonna
It's the two
drive
hours,
like,
then 2 hours back. That's like, you
yeah.
can go to San Diego.
It's, yeah, 2 hours there,
Teal.
2 hours back for the privilege of maybe getting on 3 rides at the end of the day. After
Mhm.
all of that line waiting, like, and that's where I'm like, I don't wanna. And but he's like, "Come on, my treat." I'm like, I mean, okay. Uh and and I asked him once, I was like, "Why do you keep doing that?" And he's like, "Disneyland reminds me of, like, we're all a happy family." Like, he fucking, like, it's so sweet, but I'm also, but like the three of us that have the three sisters together with their three giant personalities, like, we probably last like all of 2 hours before some fighting breaks out. And so
Sure.
I'm like, why do you do this to us, Dad? uh, and like, also the other thing he did, so like back maybe 10, no, it was 20 years ago now, back when, like, they were just building California Adventure. And so there's that plaza now that, like, you get your ticket and you can go either one of two directions. And, like, you can get like a tile. You could buy a tile and put your name down. So that way, like, you're part of Disneyland. Uh,
Oh yeah, yeah.
he did it. There's a Vasilis family tile in Disneyland. Uh,
So you'll always be there.
I am officially a part of Disneyland. It's a part of me, and I'm a part of it now. We are intertwined for the rest of time.
I mean, it is going to outlive humanity because when the machines eventually kind of get their sentience, Disney will find a way for them to also become capitalists.
Oh, the
And so
Cylons
they're
are
just gonna,
totally
yeah.
Cylons are totally gonna, like, get on. The Cylons are gonna figure out a way how to make riding the rides more efficient. They're gonna get rid of Fast Pass because they're so better than us that they're just gonna. It's gonna be great. Like, they deserve it.
All right. Well, all right. So we know that the Salton Sea is not a thing you really should go into. But here's a review from a guy on TripAdvisor about his trip.
Wait, when was this?
I believe this was around like this is like 2 years ago, so it could have been like 2017, 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think before it became a real like disaster. So he goes, we were looking for some place for swimming and sunbathing around this area, and then we found state recreation area and decided to go there. In addition, we had to pay $5 as an entry fee. First impression was that we were alone there, and all of the place smelled as hell. It was probably because of a lot of dead fish on the quote unquote beach. Oh my god, it was disgusting. My advice: never go there. It might be better during a season, but this time it is a wasting of your time and money. So I kind of think that that was a like it reads like a joke until the end. When they're like, maybe during the season, this is a great place. I'm
Damn.
like, wait.
Well, and I wonder what his interpretation of the season is, because if he's thinking, like, summer, I'm like, well, wait, so you think, like, more heat is gonna get rid of the dead fish smell?
Oh yeah, or he's there. Yeah, he's whenever he was there, it was not the current season, obviously. So anyways, that smell he was talking about, it actually kind of permeates as long as and it permeates as long and far as Los Angeles, which is about 3 hours away. That and the smell, what it is exactly. Here's a excerpt from "Toxic Dust from a Dying California Lake" by the Atlantic. The state's largest lake, the 350 square mile Salton Sea, was burping up hydrogen sulfide, a gas created by the decaying organic matter trapped beneath the water. So it's literally the just decomposition of everything that was alive in this lake, and has just been slowly going away and condensing in a smaller and smaller like hot pot.
Can I say I think I've smelled it before?
Oh, you have? Yeah,
I,
there was a summer where the fish smell came to LA.
yeah, like they're like I don't know, like having not even been there, I can visualize, and then after visualizing it, it like I can olfactorize it. I think I've smelled this smell before, and I'm pretty sure I like yeah like okay. So I live next to the a part of the LA River, and there are times where
Yeah, yeah.
it gets fucking rank, and I'm pretty sure like maybe it was like maybe a week ago, and now I know. I'm like, what is that? Is that LA River or is that Salton Sea air? Hmm.
Yeah, the fishy is, yeah, LA River's got that too, but it's got a lot of human shit smelling it too.
It definitely did not smell like human shit. Trust me, but don't, because I don't know how I'd know that. I it smelled more like fish.
Got it. We've all
The
smelled
fish
human
to
shit.
shit ratio. The fish to shit ratio heavily favored fish.
Got it. Well, if you ever were curious, as funny as it turns out, there's odor advisories, and so when this article happened, there had been five in just 1 month of October when it like reached LA. So
Oh
like
damn.
you could go check it out. You could be like, hey, is there an odor advisory at the Salton Sea today?
So like of the Salton Sea, or I can just like Google odor advisory Los Angeles, and then they would be like, here are all the smells you'll smell today.
It's like, you know what? Try that out, and then yeah, and if it doesn't give you what you want, then you know to look at the Salton Sea.
All right.
Yeah. But so the smell in and of itself actually would be bad enough, right? Um, but there's something even like worse about it. So because here's a quote from an article that kind of talks about the health problems of children growing up around this area. Uh, it says, because the lake has been used as an agricultural dump for more than a century, the dust also contains pesticides, and officials are concerned about the presence of a potentially toxic heavy metals like arsenic.
Mm-hmm.
So, so this is also in the dust that kicks up. Um, and Los Angeles has actually, LA County has spent $1.2 billion trying to suppress it.
Damn. Well, how do you suppress dust? Like, do you like? Is it like they go out to the Salton Sea to suppress it, or is it like? I mean, that's the way
Yeah,
I can
maybe.
imagine it. Because otherwise, like, what are they doing? Like putting up like chemtrail filters in the air
Yeah,
to
maybe just like
catch.
trying your best to wet it, like force some rain or something. But like, I don't know. That's so much money. That's a lot of money for a place that's like not in your county to spend on like helping you out with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you got to if like there's arsenic in the air and it's coming right at you. You're like, well, damn.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that kind of leads us to where we are today. It's a cesspool. Actually, the rains lately have helped it, but again, it's just sort of delaying the inevitable for when there's another drought and it dries up a lot again. Uh, it's gonna be a problem when everything that was alive is then just like actually just in the air and there's no longer any water.
Hmm.
But that could still be a long, long time away. But in the meantime, yeah, it's just great.
We did good.
uh,
Good job,
yeah,
humans. Great job. You did it.
we we really killed it.
You did it again.
Let's just and like really, I'm not. I think the thing that's the most disappointing is the agricultural part, because of course there's nowhere for that water to run off, like, but other places have it in like side. like little side things to the estate or something. They don't have like around here where I'm currently am, it's like farm country, and there'll be big ass like runoff ponds. Uh, so, but they don't have a pond that's like considered a sea. You know, that's a little that's a little much.
Is question maybe I've always thought a sea is designated a sea because there's a salt water to it versus I always considered a lake to be a freshwater lake and a sea to be a saltwater sea. Like I've never heard of a freshwater sea.
No, it's not fresh. It's not a freshwater sea, so it's salt.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like
So
I wonder because all the runoff is like a freshwater lake, and then there's no and yeah. So when you're talking about like farmland, it's like is it more it's like basically nothing. Oh, you're saying that basically all the runoff from all of the gorgeous farmland out there is like it's not as large of a body of water as like the big gaseous monstrosity that's the Salton Sea, right?
exactly. So it's like it's collecting, but it's not filtering out anywhere. It's just
Yeah.
staying. Like there's no eventual like groundwater system that kind of cleans it out. It's just there, and it's there forever. It's like the ultimate like it's like the regions. It's like the region is your kitchen floor, and there's a spot where the wood died underneath. And so now, anytime there's like a spill, it just always pools to that spot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and so if you never cleaned it out, that spot would be pretty funky.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Salton Sea. But yeah, so the whole point of the podcast is that we say someone died on a hill, and I think you know I was really ready to be mad at Penn Phillips, but I think the fact that he just failed a lot, like ultimately these things are his failures, and so he must have lost money. So, I'll throw that motherfucker under the bus.
But he didn't lose enough money to not get something named after him.
That's true, but maybe that's the only thing he could afford, like living on credit. And like the last good check he made was the University of whatever McKenna.
That's still too much money for me to be okay with for him. Because, like, the other thing, too, is he lost money in California, but then he still went to Oregon and still
Mhm.
he had enough money to try again. Or he built up
Yeah,
a bunch of credit. Like, something happened, but, like, he was allowed to do it again. So I'm like, well, like,
but
I don't know how
well,
that was allowed to happen.
I feel like it was early enough that it was kind of like a there will be blood deal where he just like packed up his hat, moved to the next place where he's going to make the same pitch. Like, I'm a fucking community building man. That's my business. Here's my mute child. Let me make a vacation spot, because like at that point, like what are some fucking dummies in Oregon gonna think when he's like, oh yeah, the Salton Sea, the Salton Riviera, you've seen the celebrities there, like yeah, I made that, so like what can I do for you today? And they're like, whoa, that sounds fucking cool. They have no idea that like it's there's no way in the 1950s like high desert people in Oregon are even remotely aware.
I didn't even realize it was a high desert over there.
High deserts are awful, man. They got desert people.
You're going to get like a desert person listening to this, and they are going to call you out.
Oh, no, nothing but respect for desert people. Those motherfuckers are survivors, if nothing else. They have an infinite amount of potential to apply to something, and that's what makes them so scary. It really depends on what that thing is.
I do know that if I as a desert person, but a different suburban desert person, were to go up against like a out of the way desert person, there's no way I'd survive.
Right, but as a suburban desert person, you got about as much grit as like a as a like a suburban like woods kid.
Yeah,
So
I see that. I mean, like, when it's like 110 degrees out, I just clench my teeth together and harumph instead of like
yeah,
cry and like, die in a pool or something.
yeah. It's not like your native Angelino friends who just can't even.
Yeah, exactly. I can even.
So
Philip
before
Penn,
I
man.
Philip Penn,
Is that
piece of
his name?
shit. Philip Penn, yeah. Penn
that
Phillips.
that Penn Phillips, that motherfucker, like
That's
can
rat shit fuck.
well he can
He'd
get
be
fucked, man.
he would have a coronavirus scam going on for sure if he was alive today.
Oh, 100%, 100%. He'd probably
He'd
be
be one of the
like,
first people to sell decorative face masks
oh, for sure.
at best.
I, and like it sucks because like you talk about like the undeveloped like he's probably like the fucking blueprint for the housing crisis that happened, where like it's all this development in this like and he wasn't able to sell it all and it like failed and he's like fuck off suckers. And because it was like the 1950s and no one had internet, no one could track him down, so everyone in Oregon was like, yeah, this checks out. And then he fucking failed those guys too. And in the end he's like, I have just enough money to put my name on something. And I'm like, you put so many people out. Like, can you imagine like probably like all of the construction workers that like got stranded out in the Salton Sea area because like, they went out there like what?
Just yeah, looking to do contract work and stuff. Yeah,
Exactly.
probably that's probably what a lot of the it's probably what a lot of the families out there are now because it's definitely not people like we were rich and now it's people who like literally got stuck there. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's probably local. A lot of actually, it's probably like surrounding areas. People just like were like, well, let's move the extra 50 miles to 20 miles, 100 miles, whatever, because it's a desert. Like, let's just leave our shitty town here and maybe we can work enough to have a house there. Like,
Because yeah, exactly.
and
It's
then it
cheaper
just,
there.
and then everything just died immediately.
I don't understand. I'm like we all know this about the Salton Sea. We all know how like toxic and dangerous it is. And it's a matter of like, I imagine that in 50 years, when the polar ice caps melt and then, all of those, frozen prehistoric germs go into the world and infect us even more so. The Salton Sea is going to do something similar, but instead of melting, it's going to dry up and be in the air. So, but it's like, well, what are like what are we going to do about it? Like that, it's this at this point, it's this naturally occurring toxic dump that like used to be like man made, and now it's just I don't know. I get mad when I think about all of the like all of the like yeah, like everyone was like back in the 1900s everyone was like this is great, aren't we cute, let's go ahead. Like, oh my god, did you I went to the Hoover Dam once and
Uh-huh.
they had this like video of like let's give you like a 3-minute history of the Hoover Dam. And they talked about how like they basically when they took the Colorado River and basically like dug it to make it go in the direction they wanted it to go in, they stole water from Native Americans and their
Oh yeah.
agricultural. Yeah, fuck us,
Oh,
man.
that sucks. Oh, it's such a shit move. That
Fuck
sounds
us.
really familiar. God.
And now look what we've done. Now we've created this toxic dump.
Yeah, on a lot of indigenous land too.
Yeah, yeah.
uh, God. Well, all right. Well, before we get out, you do have things online, right? You are a part of a sketch team. It's real funny, and you guys are currently putting out things, right?
That is correct. I have a sketch team called Moonshot, and we are we are a house sketch team with the Pack Theater. In the before times, we were performing once a month on the stage. I'm sure we will continue to do that once the theater opens up. But in the meantime, we are on the Pack Twitch streaming channel. So we basically do like SNL at home style sketches, except we're actually live versus SNL at home. They're called Saturday Night Live at Home, and they aren't live. But anyway, so we do that every first Sunday at 9:00, whole live sketch show. And then I also have like my own like online internet videos that are floating around somewhere, either on my website or like the Moonshot page. I don't know. They're in places. So I do comedy things.
Yeah, and you do it really well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Can you
you're great
also?
at the
I
comedy,
also.
Val.
I'm gonna take that clip and also send it to my family.